The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard the phrase play style, I'd at least have a couple dollars by now because it's been a big thing that Joe Whitt Jr. and Dan Quinn have talked about since they got here. And that's where we start with number 1.
Number 1.
Joe Whitt was asked specifically, who are the guys that are playing the way that you want your defense to play?
Frankie Louvu, it starts with him. The way he runs and hits. This last game, we won it and it was good, but Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Ben and Quan. I think Quan played really good the first game, even though we didn't play good as a defense. Those 4 men have been playing the play style, okay? All right, Frankie Louvu runs and hits and puts his body on people in a very violent manner, and we have to get everybody to do that. All right, Quan, the Tampa game, we did not play a good game defensively, but he came out of the post and had some really nice tackles, and some space tackles that were hard. So did Percy. They had some space tackles that were hard. Now, we have to get 11 guys doing it every time. And then we talked about playing with a deep crew. When those guys get tired, all right, the next group that come in have to be able to do it. And so, but if you're asking, of plays, Frankie, his whole play style is what we're looking for as a defense from a physicality, run and hit. And I thought Bobby Wagner, I challenged him on some things this past week in the coverage aspect, and he was all over it, man. He played really well this last game. Those 2 men played really well.
I thought the linebackers were better in week 2 than they were in week 1, and I think there's a lot of growth potential, especially for Louvu, because if he can get the pass rush part of his game going, that'd be great. I think they need it. But that physicality piece, the tone setting is there. But noticeably absent from that list is anybody up front. Joe Whitt Jr. also asked today, as we move on to number 2 here in our pick 6.
Number 2.
About the big 2, about Daron, about John. 2 guys that we've seen play at borderline all-pro, but certainly Pro Bowl levels, who seem to be having some level of a hard time adjusting to this new defense and the new play style. So what's going on there, Joe Whitt Jr.?
About like the rest of us, we're as a defense, we're not where we need to be. I know everybody wants to get enamored in individual player stats and numbers and all that, but we rush as a collective, we play as a collective, and once we start playing better as a collective, individuals, numbers, and all that will increase. But until we, as a collective, play better, it is going to be what it is with certain people's numbers.
I think, one, the numbers are always going to be a little bit fluctuating for what they're asking John and Daron to do and how they're playing, right? We've talked about this a lot this week. If you had a nickel for every time that I said coverage structures this week, you'd also have a couple of dollars. But realistically, when you play with 2 safeties high as opposed to an extra guy in the box, then the double teams get to stick a little bit longer. And who's getting double teamed? It's John Allen and Daron Payne. And they're talking about in the run game here. So they're going to have to be super quick off the snap. But when they do that, it's being used against them with draw plays and trap plays and wham plays, things designed to take advantage of a super aggressive defense. And so it really comes down to those guys having a little bit better play recognition, playing with better leverage, understanding what's happening to them quicker, and then using what the tools in their toolbox to get around it, shrinking down gaps, penetrating, and getting where they need to be even faster at times to make sure that they don't take themselves out of the play, but in fact they can make it. And all those things that are the intricacies of D-line play, winning the hand-to-hand combat, making sure that you don't get pushed quite as far, even a yard here, a yard there, helps other players on your team step up, and then you're in a better situation. So you give up a big or a little run instead of a big run because you did your job on first down of eating a double team more successfully. Now eventually you get to a 3rd and long, and now you can go eat as a pass rusher. And that area is where I think they can also grow this group a lot. And I do think there's an opportunity this week for that. Let's get to number 3 along those lines.
Number 3.
Joe Burrow's great. If he has one area of opportunity that I would look at as a defensive coordinator, he does have a tendency to hold the ball back there a little bit, something Joe Whitt was willing to say out loud today.
I think you have to attack his feet and get him moving. He's comfortable. He can throw. When he's in the pocket, when you hit him, he keeps his eyes downfield. He's not a guy that necessarily looks at the rush. So, he's a tough man. So, we need to be able to move him off the spot. And then when he does scramble, different than Daniel. Daniel typically scrambles to run. He scrambles to throw. And so his eyes are still downfield. So we have to do a great job on the back end of plastering the coverage, because if we pull up, now that's when the explosive plays come to life.
Something from last week that is worth noting is your rush plan as a team. And they need to do everything better when it comes to team defense, but specifically on a rush plan, has to be much more conservative facing a Daniel Jones than a Joe Burrow. Not because Daniel Jones is better, but because he's a better runner. Flushing Daniel Jones in many ways is a win for Daniel Jones. I want Daniel Jones, if I'm a defensive coordinator, to stay in the pocket and throw and try to beat me from there, because I don't think he's good enough to do it. Joe Burrow standing in the pocket and beating me from the pocket is a death wish. So let's take the risk of flushing him out, getting him on the run, narrowing down the parts of the field that are accessible, because he's not Mahomes. He's not going to throw the ball back across his body 50 yards. He's going to, the more he rushes to his right as he rolls, more of the field becomes off limits to him. And so it's less space you have to cover. And again, it's not that I would prefer to face Daniel Jones than Joe Burrow. It's just a different kind of aggressiveness you can bring to your rush, because it's not as big of a deal if a guy gets out and runs. With that said, it allows a little more freedom. And one of the things that I expect to happen more and more this season, especially as Johnny Newton gets back, and especially as Joe Whitt Jr. and Dan Quinn get to know Allen and Payne, is I would expect to see them move around a little bit. We saw it the tiniest amount last week on the line, but is that something that's in play? Joe Whitt asked about that today.
Yeah, we pressured a good bit, and we're going to move guys. People can take one or two guys, well, really one guy away from you with the protection, the way that they want to do it. But like I said, I never said that we're going to come in here and we're going to have two guys rush. We want to rush as a unit, and so we want to put a wave at them, and we have to do a better job of, if we have a pressure call, don't be selfish at all in any kind of way. Run the pressure, because if you get out of your lane, you're knocking somebody else off. And so, just like on the back end, we have to cover as a collective. We have to rush as a collective. And
you can see that happening on tape too. You can see hey, Daron jump, and I don't know who's right or wrong, but you see like Daron jumps inside, Luvu jumps outside, and now we got a big rush. We got a muddle on one side that's easy to block, and we got a whole bunch of space on the other side that's an easy escape lane. Or sometimes these pressures were called, and the Giants wound up running the football, and now you have a gigantic lane because these two guys haven't communicated a rush plan together. And this blitz that also might have been kind of a run blitzy type of thing, instead of becoming hard to block for the Giants, became real easy, and you got an explosive play given up. So you got to be really smart with how you execute these things. You have to be really disciplined as a defense and make things hard for an offensive line, and they just didn't really do a great job of that last week. They did a better job in week 1 and then couldn't finish. So we'll see if they can get back on track here in week 3 against Cincinnati. When we get back, you'll hear from Cliff Kingsbury on the back half of our Pick 6, including him answering everyone's favorite question this week. How do you get Terry McLaurin the football more? You got to hear what Cliff said, because I thought it was both snarky and good. Next on the Team 980.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.